Alright. Okay, first and foremost, I'm going to apologize for the trickling noise. I am, after all, in my basement. We just had a bunch of rain come in over the last few days, so, and I'm, basically live on top of an aquifer, so we always get just a little bit of rainwater coming in. Alright, let's see what I can do about getting myself organized here. Also, new chair. New to me chair. Kind of an old chair, actually, so we're going to see how that goes. And what have we got? We've got a mess. Always a mess. I don't know what it is about the idea of a workshop. Like, it's kind of like bedrooms. No matter what you do, they always accrue mess to potentially intolerable levels. And I'm not even that much like of a neat freak. In fact, I'm hardly a neat freak. For those who actually know me personally, they can attest I am not a cleanly-oriented person. So, what I've got here are a bunch of things that need some detail lines. And some dry brushing. So I think that's what we're going to do today. Oh, let me set this up somewhere where I can actually see it. Cool. Oh, wrong button. Okay. And more Corvettes. So these guys have gotten a wash. I was kind of on the fence about how the wash came out. I feel like it was a little too light. I can't imagine that you guys can actually see what the wash looks like on camera. But considering that this is a new wash recipe that I'm just trying out, I think it's good. I think it could use a little bit of darkening, but the surface tension and the viscosity of the wash came out really good. I didn't get that much pooling in the raised areas, and it seeped into the interstices quite nicely. I got a dark spot here, but I'm not sure that there was enough pigment to really get as strong a contrast as I wanted, so I might play with the recipe and give these yet another wash. But, or I guess I could just, give it another wash with our current pigment level, and then for the next batch, do it that way. But that being said, somehow the idea of changing it up mid-process scares me. So, if there's any way we can avoid doing that, I will avoid doing that. Cool. Not for nothing, but I kind of regret painting these so similarly. These are actually two different vessels in my hand right now. If I can get this one to behave. There we go. They're very similar. They're arguably too similar. And next to each other I can tell the difference, but it takes me a minute to process which one's which. So I'm not exactly filled with confidence as far as my ability to readily identify them. So I think I'm going to be using different colored bands on the detail paint job for these. I'm going to use this one as a model for my other ones. The other thing I like about this wash is it's not nearly as glossy. If you can tell, my previous wash came out really glossy like, and that's just because I used a homebrew Nuln oil water and dish mix, and I've noticed that Nuln oil actually comes out really glossy. So this wash is a lot more matte, which I like. Again, I think it could stand to be a little more pigmentized. Or like I said, I might just do another wash pass on these. I'm not sure. Gotta think about it. But I don't want to hit decision paralysis too bad. However, the wash on these guys came out good, but these are, again, a second pass on an existing wash, so maybe 2 coats of wash is a good thing. Let me see if I've got another one that's... You know what? Gonna leave good enough to be good enough. Let me get a cup of rinse water together. I love having a shop sink. It has changed my life for the better. And I know I have a specific detail brush that I've been using because it's got the right size. This is a 5/0 brush, very tiny. And I've got my trim coat here. I'm just gonna put it down. Okay, so I've got a line here. Okay, this is actually really watered down, so I'm going to give this a shake. Mix it up a little. And that grinding sound you might or might not hear is actually my sub pump going. Now I know that's watered down, so I'll probably have to come back on that edge and do it over. But for now, I'll let it dry. I've noticed that when your paint is a little more runny than you want it to, let it dry in spite of that, you know? And that's very uneven. One side is thicker than the other, but you know what? I don't want to touch that runny paint yet, so I'm just going to leave that for another thing. That's a nice solid line. That's good. Still slightly runny, but perfect. That one's good. Oh, way too much paint there. That's a problem. I overloaded the brush a little. That'll be okay. That one's just going to take a bit to dry. Alright, we're going to do all these in with orange bands. I'm going to do this one here with white bands instead of orange, and then I'll do these in white just to make a visual difference with these two, but that'll be shared. I just don't know what I want to do for where the bands are on these. I think so there's a difference. I might have to go over that with the gray. Perfect. Do one little line on the engine. Oh, that's good. And I'm intentionally only doing one half of these. Like I'm all doing the port side, starboard side. That way I can leave the starboard to dry before I come back and do the port side. There we go. All right. Super simple. I like simple. I am simple. Which is not the same thing as dumb. I am very simple. Proudly simple, even. Simple is not the same thing as stupid. And yeah, even though this is a somewhat larger brush, I'll just proceed with caution. And these might actually take 2 passes. And that's okay. Or maybe not. That comes out clear enough. Trying to decide how I want to do these just to make them different. There's no real good place to do a band except like, I'll do it there, why not? That curved on me, crap. Alright, so the resin on this one's a little more porous. That soaked up the paint right quick. Despite my primer and base coat. I mean, that's okay, but just interesting to note. So I have noticed a couple of bad castings of these. One of the cruisers I have actually had a bad casting, so the back end was kind of hollow, like it was a very thin shell, whereas obviously these are pretty solid. So I ended up squeezing it and it just collapsed, and it was because the surface was coated, the inside of the mold was coated, but it didn't actually have enough plastic injected into it to fill the void, so it had an air bubble, which is fine, shit happens. I think what ended up happening was, because this game is no longer in print, I think a lot of these miniatures are actually from the end set, like towards the end of the company, because the company went under. So some of the castings aren't necessarily up to snuff, which is fine. Shit happens. But in this case, what I did was I assembled the model as best I could and chopped it in half and put some styrene bits in there. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to see how that looks. So I've got some styrene bits, a couple, what's the term? The trees from injected models. These things, I can't remember what they're called. I don't know why they're blanking on me. I've always called them trees, but I know they have a more common name. So I glued a bunch of those into the thing and went at it with a wood burning tool or soldering iron. Carved some gashes in there, painted it up, gave it a nice thick wash. 3 coats of wash I think I did on these, just to get it darkened up. Did a heavy dry brush of a medium to light gray for space dust, I guess. And I've got some debris. So I've yet to paint the base for this, but... Oh, dang it. The one of the magnets came loose. I have to fish that out now. Let's hope I can. Okay, cool. I was able to fish that out. I have to glue that back on there. It's going to be interesting. Let me roughen that up with some sandpaper first so the glue has something to snag onto. I should have an open thing of CA glue somewhere. Maybe. Maybe not. I don't see it. That's alright. I've got plenty more. Always get the small things of CA glue, by the way. It's tempting to get a big giant bottle. I promise you that any giant bottle of CA glue will dry before you end up using all of it, and it's a huge waste. Get a bunch of little bottles. They're more cost efficient, and you don't waste a bunch. Poke that open with a toothpick. Get that all mounted up. Get my stick here. And get the magnet on there. And now I wait. Now, what I normally do is wait until I can dismount the magnet that I'm gluing from the rest of the magnets holding the magnet there. Like that. That was bad. Don't do that. Gotta let it cure for a bit. Basically want it to cure until like once it can hold its weight. Not like that. Alright. Change in tactics. Slight change in tactics. Ah! Also, I am very particular about getting CA glue on my hands. That is a feeling that I despise. Makes me entirely too uncomfortable. So I tend to be very particular about my CA glue usage. So I'm not sure if the thing's in shot right now, but basically what I've got here is a 1, 2, 3 block holding up a bunch of magnets. The thing that I'm gluing to it, so I can hold it there with one hand, and then I'm gonna spray the glue with a touch of accelerant just to try and get it to cure. Hopefully that's... Oh, that's off center. That's way off center. Hopefully that's not a deal breaker. That's fine. And honestly, they should be. They are not compatible. That's okay. That is to say, I can't flip the peg over. Use it that way. You know what? No, I don't like it. I don't know where my needle nose pliers are. I'm sure they're around here somewhere. So, rip that off. Gonna do it again. There we go. This time, I'll get it actually lined up. Oh, way too much glue. Nope. Screwed the pooch on that one too. And I got it all over my fingers. Dang it. Let me see if I can fix this. Never thought I would have this much difficulty gluing a magnet to a piece of plastic. Stay humble, kids. Okay. Instead of doing it the way that I had been, I'm going to do it this way so I can see it from two different directions at once. Also, I imagine that the surface tension of the glue will help get it controlled so I don't get it on my hands again. There we go. Just gonna throw that down there. Ha 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 ha. Where's my sanding stick? So, one thing I will say is that the accelerant does tend to make clear plastic fog up. I don't really care about it that much in this instance because this and the pegs will eventually be painted black anyways. So it doesn't really matter to me. Also, sanding isn't really helping. So what I'm doing is actually sanding the wad of CA glue. So I'm trying to sand it back down to a 3mm diameter rod rather than a 3mm diameter rod with a giant bulb on the end. Yeah, that's better. So, anyways, so I've got these two pieces of debris that lock onto this here base, which will eventually get painted black. Ta-da! And the debris pieces have little magnets mounted in them. So just little debris field. This is in shape of a debris field from Armada, at least one of them. So I plan on populating all my debris fields this way, but the idea is that I can remove the magnets just so that if I need to, you know, get in there with a ship, I can remove those to make it easier, but if they're not there, then they're pretty. I'm just gonna mount that. Throw that back over here, and back to the painting. Oh, you know what? There's a perfect place for another white band. Gotta be careful not to overload the brushes because there's a little indent there, and I know that as soon as I pass my brush over it, it's gonna flow out from there. So I really gently paint that. That's good. I like that. That's good. Do the same thing over here. It's the other issue if I have really flowy paints. If I paint over a gap or an indent, it'll flow. I get that a lot with panel lines if my water's too washy. Like it started to do it right there. We'll deal with these flotillas in a little bit. That was a callback to, was it Intensify Forward Firepower? Was that the name of the podcast? That is no longer. I also miss Armada Jim. I need to go see if he's posted anything recently. I wish there were another Armada podcast, and I'm sure there are actually more Armada podcasts out there. I just don't know of any of them. Damn it, that one got out of control. So now I've got to even it up. Just let that dry. Cool. Those are those little Corvettes. Oh, yeah, I can do the other side of this while I have my weight paint loaded. Now, if I were a professional, I would go into, like, masking out all these lines and doing it like that, but honestly, it just takes... It's a time-benefit analysis doesn't work out. Debating if I want to put little lines on the engines. I'm thinking no. Just little hints. Now on bigger ships, yeah, it might be worth masking out. But if you've got a steady hand, and you know, if you can get a feel for what your brush wants to do, masking becomes slightly unnecessary when it comes to models of this size. It just doesn't become worth it. So these are my flotillas for the CSA. 2 sets of 2 flotillas. I'm probably going to do a set in orange, a set in white. Probably just do a band there, like right there on the front, and here on this little engine shroud thingy here and there. I keep my coffee over there now so I don't confuse it with my water paint. I did that once. I don't even remember what film that's from. I know I should know. My partner showed it to me last year. What was it? The Bastages. Wasn't Val Kilmer? Oh, it was Val Kilmer, wasn't it? Plays a gangster. Film's basically all about him taking the piss. I can't remember what the film was. My partner's gonna kill me. Not really, but you know. She'll at least be disappointed. Okay. So. Let's get Treadstone. I have some corrections to make to these guys. So I'm going to make them. Let's get out a slightly bigger brush. Go to town. The correction here is that I want the prow to be gray rather than tan, and that'll also help me in making a distinction between these two very similar vessels. The gray proud ones will be the larger ones, and the tan proud ones will be the smaller. All works out. Well, let's actually not paint that little band there. Let's leave that as tan. Oh, I got too much paint over here. Need to move that around a little. There we go. There we go. It's good. It's good. This little button nose taken care of. Might need a slight second coat here. Then again, I kind of knew that. You see, what I end up doing, I don't want to say it's part of my problem, but one of the things that I encounter is that these paints are actually fairly thin. And the reason for that is because these paints are actually intended for airbrushes. So, you know what, I've actually just noticed that I do have the gray on the bands there, so I'm probably going to go back and change that. So I am painting by bristle brush, using paints that are intended for airbrushes, without any kind of medium to thicken it up or anything. And that's okay. I've gotten used to using these thinner brushes, or these thinner paints, and I actually really like how they tend to flow. So I'm not sure if it's the batch that I have or the brand. What I have noticed though is that some of these are thinner than others, which I don't notice as much when I'm using them as an airbrush, though some of them you notice when you're using them as an airbrush. Like I've got one where it is so thin that if you're not careful, it will start to ripple right quick. You gotta really creep up on it. To the point where I actually made my own homemade batch of, like a color matched a homemade batch, just to avoid the thinness of that particular paint. I think it's the batch though, and the reason for that is because so when I got started with airbrushing, I got a complete set of paints. Like this is Minotaur brand, which is okay. But I have the entire line, like in these size bottles. Cost me about like $150 or so for the entire thing, and it's like 100 or so paints, and they're okay. They're not Vallejo, but they do well enough for me. But when I got low on one of the paints, I ordered I think a 3-ounce bottle instead of the 1-ounce bottle that these all are, and it wasn't an exact match in pigment, so like it was darker and slightly warmer. So I have to wonder if did I just get a bad batch? Did they change their pigmentation process? Are they just not reliable paints? I don't know. To be perfectly honest, I probably, when I run out or run low on a lot of these paints, I will probably graduate to Vallejo and not use Miniatura anymore. But for an entry-level thing, they're not bad. They're not bad at all. I actually really like their transparent paints. That's one I will probably continue to get after I graduate to Vallejo, unless Vallejo has a good set of transparent paints. Miniatura calls them ghost tint. And they're really handy for like when I get into a metal effect. I'll use the Molotow. Their stuff. Liquid chrome. Sorry, that's liquid chrome. If you get a really nice surface finish on something, like a really smooth, glossy surface finish, and you hit it with that, it's so metallic, it's reflective. Like you can see yourself in it. And then I'll do a clear coat in a specific clear coat. I think it's up there on my rack. I can't remember the name of it. But if you're curious, it's the same thing that Adam Savage used to paint one of the bullnose, or one of the palm blasters from Blade Runner that he painted recently. And by recently, I think I mean last year. But yeah, same idea. It's that Molotow chrome. I'll do the clear coat, and then I'll hit it with one of the ghost tint ones, usually blue, and it really comes out as a nice anodized aluminum look, or anodized metal. I was going to say anodized chrome, but I don't know if you can actually anodize chrome, but you can powder coat chrome, so I guess that's what I mean. That candy chrome look you can achieve with the Miniatura ghost tints. One day I'll actually work on these lightsabers again, and I'll be doing that in a couple places, so stay tuned for that at some point in the vague future that is undefined. Oh, I think I hear my cat screaming at me from upstairs. He's very vocal when he is alone. He has separation anxiety, I think. Poor buddy. I don't let him into the workshop, not because I'm afraid of him getting hurt, but because it's in the basement. The basement's gross, and I don't want to have to give him a bath. Which, for a cat, he handles baths pretty well. Like, he's not a fan, but, like, he doesn't claw. He doesn't scratch. In fact, he doesn't even howl. He just looks at me and goes, why have you betrayed me? And he'll try and like scramble out of the shower. But like he's not violent. Then again, this is the cat that if you like if he accidentally scratches you, you can see the remorse on his face. He's so sad. Or he'll run and hide because he feels terrible. He's got a guilt complex. And he's so sweet. I love my cat. He's a good buddy. Really low key, not so demanding. Just so long as he has a human nearby, he's happy. He's happy. I love my Bizarro. One more. And I'm gonna have to... Well, I'm not sure if I'm gonna actually go back over this with a wash just to get this nose out of the way. It's kind of a debate going on in my head as to whether or not I want to try and be precisely, like, lay down a wash on these small parts here, or if I can just get away with doing a dry brush and calling it good. So that's something I'm going to have to decide at some point. Because I can already, like, granted, yes, the paint is wet still. I can see the tone difference without the wash. But I think what I'm going to do is try and hit it with a dry brush first, because I have yet to do that on this step, on these guys. And see if by doing a dry brush it kind of unifies them again. And if it works out, cool. If not, I'll do a wash and then a re-dry brush. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Here we go. Like I said, this is just to get contrast between two of these guys. All right. Cool. Checking the Twitters. Checking Twitters. Okay. Done checking the Twitter. Okay. Let's dig out another one of these. I'm too lazy to go get my paper towels. Which is sad because they're like right over there. Right there. They're like 5 arm lengths away. Which is arguably farther than really is lamentable when you're sitting down and don't want to get up. It's like, if they were like beyond fingertip range, it'd be like, this fucking sucks. But like 8 or 9 feet isn't really like a lamentable distance to be like, Because at that point you just sound like an idiot. Then again, sometimes I'm just lazy. And I don't mind bitching about being lazy. Sometimes. Oh, that got too broad. Just let it dry, Rob. Let it dry. Fuck it. We'll fix it in post. Well, it looks like all my heavy cruisers are actually all done. So we can move back over to these corvettes and frigates. Nope. That's okay. Cool. The other thing that I've realized with this particular wash, it is not as good at hiding my crimes as my previous wash was. Like, it's okay. Not as good, though. That's alright. Just means I have to be more diligent in my detail painting and alright. That's all of them except for these here flotillas. So I'm thinking just a line there and a line on the bow. So just whoop. Oh shit. Okay. There's a bit of dust on there that I didn't notice when I painted. That's alright. It's good enough. Anyways. Yeah. Yeah, I like how that came out. What I like about these guys, too, is that they have a certain resemblance to a YV979 freighter. Can't remember the registration. Hang on, I'll get out the model in just a second. Here you are. They kind of resemble these guys. I don't think you're going to be able to pick up the detail. Maybe. I don't know. So, they look similar in... they have a similar design... what's the word? Not family. Yeah, they look like they're the same family of vessels. I'll put it like that. It's nice. It's always good to have a theme going, to be able to see things that run with it. Makes it easier to unify things that aren't quite as unified with some other mechanism than just using the same paints. Oh, that did not come out good. I'm actually tempted to just do the whole nose. I might. Not sure yet. We'll come back to that. I'm going to dig out my whites in a second to do the other two flotillas. Let me throw this up on my magnetic peg, just so I don't screw it up. Let me get these ready for it too. Alright, the whites. This is the other flotilla, so I'm going to do an orange and a white. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Oh, drive-by viewer. They were there. Now they're gone. Didn't even say hi. How rude. I mean, that's fair. I didn't say hi because I didn't notice until just when I saw the thing tick down. It's okay. Okay. Just want to make sure I didn't have too much water in the paint. Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Okay, we're just gonna peg that right there. It's a slightly bigger brush, so I gotta be a little more diligent in how I decide to... Did I get both of these? Yeah, I did. Okay. Gotta be slightly more diligent in how I lay down the paint. Just because they're longer bristles, and that means I can go out of control far more readily. It's weird. It's almost like, with larger brushes, yes, you need to be more diligent, but you also just need to commit. It's like you can... Something got caught in the bristles. Don't know what that was about. That's good. I should have just left that and let it dry and then go over it. But I was silly. Trying to fix it, and I did end up fixing it, but there's something in the bristles here I need to fish out. Where are my tweezers? There we go. No major damage. I'm good. Sorry, chicken news. Alright, back to what I was doing. I'm kind of on the fence as to whether or not I want to give the same decorations to this wreckage. To be honest, I feel like it is kind of lacking without it. Like, as if to ask yourself, well, why doesn't this have markings? Everything else does. But at the same time, I'm kind of worried about it being too bright because I was silly and didn't do the wash afterwards. So, I don't know. I'm kind of debating. I'm also kind of debating as to whether or not I'll lay down some liquid latex on it and then paint the details and then peel the liquid latex off, hoping to get some kind of weird rough pattern to the edge of the paint as if to indicate, like, you know, scratches. Not sure yet. Gotta think on it. There's a whole lot of gotta think on it going around this time. But yeah. And as I'm looking at these, I think a second wash on the heavy cruisers might be warranted. let's run another side by side here. If I can try and... Yeah, I think it does. I think it needs a second wash. That's annoying. Washes take forever to dry. Best to get it done tonight then, I guess. I think the frigates and corvettes, it's got some nice contrast to it, and I think I only really need to worry about the gray bits. Get some heavier contrast in there. Because I know my dry brushing is going to lift that up a lot, and I don't want it to get washed out. So I think if I shouldn't have shaken it. I always do that. I always regret shaking it as I... Let me get the stands out so I can work on these properly and put them down. I'm done. Where are your stands? There they are. Get these all lined up. This one's already good. Should have 6 here. There. Throw these down off to the side so I don't knock them up and clear out some room. There are my stands. Let's get these mounted up at least. That'll help with this. So yeah, I think part of my problem here is that the wash isn't quite dark enough. Now, there is matte medium in here, so it probably dries darker than it appears to. Yeah, I'm gonna throw just a little more acrylic ink in here. Just the open one. Yeah, this is the open one. Okay. Let's try that. Just darken up the wash just a little bit more. We're actually going to set this one aside. Let's get out another one. Yeah, that's much better. It's still grayish, but I think a lot of that has to do with that matte medium. I'm certain that it dries darker. And I'm just worrying about the gray bits. I'm not going to hit the tan hull if I can help it. except in there. I'm gonna hit that. Because I didn't really hit that well last time. So. I'm being a little more precise in my wash placement than I normally am. Normally, I'm just like swaths and swaths of wash. Just throw it down, see where it goes. Not this time. This time, it's all about making sure I hit the right spots. It's like I'm an Imperial Stormtrooper. Also, currently the wash is very foamy, which might be a problem later. Gotta be careful about that. After adding all that, the additional ink and giving it a good shake, I probably should have let it settle before I tried to use it. That would have been smart. Just a little bit in there. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I can already tell this is gonna be much better wash pass than the last one. Much better. Oh, missed a spot. Yes, good. Let's do another one. We can do one more. Because I only have 3 stands. I mean, technically I have more. But these are junk stands. I don't like these stands. They're for a ship that I don't like. And am planning on getting replacements for. And at the end, when I'm get said replacements, I will just paint these black to cover up all the layers of dry brush that I have on it. Until I cast and make my own stands, and then I can be like, I'll just make more. So they'll be effectively disposable. But haven't gotten there yet. Planning to, just haven't. Oh. Yeah, you know what, that's fine. Might be laying it on just a little too thick on this one. Me laying it on thick? No. But I'm a millennial, it's what we do. yeah. This is the one that I worked on before. Just need to be careful to not overdo the area that I hit earlier. Alright, almost done with this. Oh, I missed the back entirely. Awesome. You know, I should probably learn to be a little more systematic about how I paint my models. Be like, I start with this, move on to this, end with that. I never did a wash on the front, so that's a problem. Alright. That's good. I can't do the other three because I don't, like I said, I don't have the stands available. So I will have to do that later. I can't do a dry brush on those because those are still drying. And unfortunately, washes take forever to dry. Ugh. Alright, cigarette break. And I might actually close down because it's approaching midnight. I'll think about it. But I'll come back before I close down the stream. Bear back. Alright. Where were we? We were waiting for paint to dry. Awesome! I could base coat these other 12 ships that I've got here, but honestly, I don't want to dig out the airbrush right now. Because again, it's midnight. I could dry brush these. But I'm yawning a lot. I think that's a sign that I need to go to bed. And I work in the morning, and whilst I'm working from home tomorrow, ugh. But at least I'm working from home tomorrow. I have Friday off. I might come back tomorrow night. And definitely be back over my 4-day weekend. So there's that. I can already tell just by looking at this wash as it's drying. It is significantly darker. Came out better. Good. Very good. So, some other ships that I've got here. Some nice frigates. There we go. Those are the other 12 that I have yet to base coat in the tan and paint over with the dark gray for the tech details. As you can probably tell, there are significant differences between some of these. That's actually primarily because this is from a different faction for the same game. But what I've got here, if I take... This is a battleship that I've completed. And one for the other faction of the same game, but I've painted them in the same colors in hopes of unifying them a bit. And yeah, I think it came out pretty good. I think it's convincing enough. That's all I really needed. So yeah. Nice medium ship, nice large ship. Got a victory here for this fleet because the CSA used victories, like surplus victories from the Empire. So got a victory here. And a handful, by which I mean 2 Marauder corvettes. And I've got some Action 4 or Action 6, I can never remember the number, transports here, which also serve as some flotillas next to these guys. So I've got 2 of these. So that's one flotilla. I like the idea of having only 1 flotilla per fleet, so that's why I'm thinking the Dornian gunship will be a flotilla. And got these that are already painted up. These are more of these, so I've got 6 of these total. 3 are painted, 3 are unpainted. I've got a total of 10 of the heavy cruisers. I've got 5 of these medium ships, which these are kind of... So these are obviously the same faction as this from the other game, but I've made some modifications, like I've got a different underside here, and these bits here underneath are a different shape from the original model, and I was just to give them something slightly different. because I like the keel. I like that look. But these are kind of my interpretation of the Invincible class from Star Wars Legends, because that's a ship that appears in, I think, one of the comics or one of the books. I don't know. And this is kind of a close interpretation of it. So this was kind of my entry to converting these Ceruleans to CSA, because these other ships are kind of, similar enough that I can kind of wedge them in there. The Terrakian ships from Firestorm Armada being CSA ships is kind of less, what's the word? Not as strong a buy-in. Like, it's got a slightly cylindrical fuselage like the Invincible does over there. But I think what sells it as a Star Wars-esque ship is the fact that these turrets are arranged similar to what you would find on a Star Destroyer, and the Hammerhead Bridge also. So I think it's good enough to call a Star Wars-esque ship. So yeah, more CSA, and I've got a pair of dreadnoughts that I've converted over to CSA duty. These, of course, are a Legends staple. And I like the idea of, again, surplus ships from the Empire making their way into the CSA. So, I need to stat all these still. I haven't built stats for all of these. Wes Jansen actually took some time to offer some stats for these guys, which I will be using. I think I've got one for the Victory, which I'm branding as a Victory 3, which I kind of like the idea of an improvement over the Victory 1 and 2, such that the CSA would get extra life out of it, but it probably wasn't useful for the Empire, so that's why they didn't bother, because they have the Imperial class, so why would they even bother with Victories anymore? So, and I think I've got a set of stats for the Marauder Corvettes. And I think that's it. I might have some stats for the Action 4 flotilla sitting around. But the rest of these, I still need to stat. Make cards for, make upgrades for. Things like that. But I'll get to that eventually, in the fullness of time. So. And then I need to playtest them. Make sure they're actually fun, viable, and feel different from either the Rebels or the Imperials. That's an important thing. I've got some fighters sitting around. I'll show those off later. So yeah. Oh, and these guys, these little frigates, the orange ones. And now that's actually, oh wait, no, that's an old one. Let me pull a newer one. See how that, yeah, now that's darkened up quite a bit. That's good. It probably still needs a bit of a darkened tone for wash, but it's good. These guys, I have, how many of these do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 of them. I have 10 of them sitting here. 3 of the white frigate version, and I have 4 of these flotillas. I've got one other massive battleship that I have yet to even prime, let alone base coat. But I'm not sure I'm gonna use that for the CSA. I mean, it's a Cerulean battleship. I'll dig it out at some point and show it off, probably the next time I stream. It's still not as big as the Imperial Star Destroyer model, which is okay. It's a little bit bigger than like a Liberty or a Home One Moncal, so it still fits as a large ship. But my hesitation in using it is due to just let me just dig it. Okay, so this is the main hull. And yeah, so obviously it has commonality with like these guys and the Invincible. It's not assembled yet, so it's missing the drive port and the gun bits. The hesitation I have is because I'm not as much a huge fan of the design of this one. This thing here is a little weird. I haven't fully bought into the idea that I can pull this one off as much. So on my part, there's a certain amount of hesitation in trying, and I don't want to waste the effort, but really I'll probably end up trying it out, especially once I can get the engine mounted, because I don't want to use the original. I would rather use a cast part, so I have the original sitting around. But this one I'll assemble and prime soon, TM. Probably do it this weekend on my 4-day weekend. So yeah, like I've been saying for a little bit, it's midnight here, so I'm probably gonna close up for the night, and might jump back on tomorrow or Friday, where I will probably assemble and prime this guy just to see if I can pull it off. Probably base coat these guys, finish washing or second coat washing these three, start dry brushing all the ones that I've washed and detail painted tonight. And maybe eventually I'll actually get done with this fleet and I can move on to the Hapes, finally. Maybe, eventually. Hopefully. Of which I have one of, and it's my home scratch built model. Which I'm happy with, but like, it's not as impressive as these guys. There was a 3D printer that I saw that was like an SLA printer for $200, which, you know, too good to be true, so it is, but like, it's indicative of SLA printers finally coming down in price to the point where I would vaguely consider investing in one that is more expensive than $200, but less so than $1,000. I think I've been seeing one floating around for about $500, which, you know, in a few months I might actually pick up. SLA 3D printer. Start making homebrew ships myself instead of buying them all through Shapeways. Not that I love Mel, and I will continue to buy his stuff, and same goes for a Gravitas Drain. They do fantastic work, and I can't match their skill. But there are some ships that I want to have done where Mel is understandably reticent to do non-Star Wars ships, which is, you know, they're right. That's how they feel about it. It's their prerogative. And I don't really have the money to properly commission an artist to 3D model ships yet. Gravitas Drain and I have been having a conversation about doing that, but it's a lot of money, and it would be well deserved. I love their work, and I would rather support a local artist rather than, you know, quote-unquote local. But in absolute terms, it's still a significant amount of money. So I have to do some weighing of cost-benefit analysis. Is it worth it for me to brush up on my 3D skills to the point where I can get, 3D printable models that I'm happy with, and then invest in a 3D printer and print my own? Or do I invest in supporting an artist to commission those 3D models and then buy them on Shapeways? Or, commission the models, then invest in a 3D printer and print. That's a good chunk of change there. So, all things that I'm considering. In any event, like I said, I'm going to close down. So, enjoy, have fun, and I will catch y'all at some statement of cliche.